So with that, Kierra, I would like to let you go ahead and speak. If you have anything that you want to share, you have sharing privileges. So Kierra, you want to introduce yourself and tell us who you are and what you do?
Yes. So hi, everybody. Sharon, I actually don't have a presentation today.
Okay.
I know when you and I had discussed during the Mobility Management Roundtable, I was just coming to discuss some things about 5310, the 5310 program, more specifically those vehicles that are awarded through the 5310 program. So Sharon, please feel free to fire back some questions at me. We can kind of make this a conversation that might make it a little bit easier for individuals who are not aware of the program. But
Okay.
hi, everybody. I am Kierra Branch. I'm the 5310 program coordinator with ODOT, Ohio Department of Transportation, more specifically the Office of Transit. My role specifically is the Specialized Transportation Program. Within that program, we award projects such as 5310 vehicles, which there might be some agencies here today that have received vehicle projects through ODOT in the past, or previously have received some ODOT vehicles. In addition to that, we do have our operating assistance projects through the 5310 program, our software equipment, as well as our preventative maintenance project that we have where you can receive funding dollars to provide repairs on the current active 5310 vehicles that you do currently have. But more specifically, I wanted to talk about the 5310 vehicles that you may receive or possibly, would receive if you were to apply for the program, what that looks like, and then how those vehicles can be utilized within the actual county, which is very important. So Sharon approached me a few, apologize, there was a message on my screen, but Sharon approached me a few weeks ago in our mobility management conference call regarding 5310 vehicles and how she might be able to assist individuals within the county for utilizing those vehicles, for transportation for seniors and persons with disabilities, which I thought was a really great idea. When you do receive a 5310 vehicle, we are, encouraging our subrecipients to utilize those vehicles as much as you can, providing the transportation to seniors, providing the transportation to persons with disabilities, and then in general, just the general public. And so sometimes subrecipients don't really know how to, utilize those vehicles or, the many different options that they have. And so what ODOT is doing now is we're pulling in our mobility managers across the state that are in these different counties as a way for them to review the current 5310 vehicles in their area, those that are active, and then ways in which we could all work together to utilize those vehicles. And Sharon, I wasn't sure if you wanted to add anything else, if there were any additional questions you might have for me.
So I guess we have, I think, quite a few people who are on right now. I think we have Licata Way that has some vehicles. I saw Neighborhood Alliance that's in the midst of getting vehicles and also transferring some vehicles over to them. They've been great partners with us so far. I guess I just want to mention one of the ways in which we've been able to work with them, or maybe we can start with this. What are some unique ways in which mobility managers can work with these vehicles? Because I think there needs to be a clear understanding of how the organizations use those vehicles for their needs, but then what happens when those vehicles may be sitting idle? What can a mobility manager do? Maybe you can explain that.
Absolutely. So Neighborhood Alliance is actually a really great example of the question that you just had, Sharon. So within the 5010 program, we don't like to see vehicles sitting. Those vehicles were awarded to provide transportation for seniors and persons with disabilities. But we understand that there might be an adult day program or an adult senior center that might have closed down due to, COVID or a number of factors. So the mobility manager in that area really works with ODOT in understanding which vehicles might need to be utilized in a different way or what vehicles can be transferred. So Neighborhood Alliance is a really great example that Sharon, I'm going to mention here. So Sharon contacted me, or I was contacted by an agency in Lorain County that is currently shutting down their adult day program. And they have about 4 5310 vehicles that they're not going to be able to use. Well, we want to understand how we can basically repurpose those vehicles. And so when I contacted Sharon, Sharon said, hey, I know an agency right now that doesn't have any vehicles and they're wanting to continue to provide transportation for seniors and persons with disabilities, Neighborhood Alliance. And so right now, ODOT is working with Neighborhood Alliance and Eliza Bryant to transfer Eliza Bryant's vehicles to Neighborhood Alliance. That way, transportation in that specific area can continue to be utilized. So that's one way that mobility managers, come in and are able to assist agencies with repurposing those vehicles so that they're not sitting. In addition to that, they're really kind of the bridge between what's going on in the county with those specific vehicles and what's happening here at ODOT. So utilizing the mobility manager to say, hey, these are the vehicles I have in my fleet from 5310. I don't believe that I'm going to be able to utilize them to the full capacity. There are a few vehicles that I might have sitting. We can find unique ways with the mobility manager to transfer those vehicles to other agencies that possibly need them in the county.
So, and I guess another, and I would love to hear any other questions that people have. So if you can use the reaction, let me see, where is it? It used to be down at the bottom. They've changed things around on Zoom. And you can raise your hand. Does somebody have a question or want to say something? Thought I heard somebody. Okay. If not, one of the other things, Kierra, that I think is important is that these agencies may use them for the needs designated. In other words, they have seniors, they're at a senior facility, they're using them for their seniors, but then sometimes they can sit idle. And I think that that's the most unique things for us as mobility managers, that if we know that they may have some idle time, that we may be able to use those to support the lack of transit that we do have in Lorain County right now. And the one way that we did this here in Lorain County is we did that for the vaccines. When we knew that there were low income people, seniors, people with disabilities who may not be able to get to these clinics that were happening around Lorain County. So I called upon Licata Way, Kendall at Oberlin, trying to think, even Lorain County Transit, and we created kind of a network in various cities. We did this in Lorain, we did this in Elyria, we did this in Oberlin, we did this in Wellington to help get people to these vaccine centers. So I think, have you seen a lot of examples of that, of when these vehicles are sitting idle, how a mobility manager can utilize them in those ways? And that's the way that it's really supporting the network that we have.
Absolutely, Sharon. So the example that you used is really the biggest example that I've seen, definitely pre-pandemic and then post-pandemic, where 5310 agencies were really partnering with the mobility managers to provide that transportation either to local hospitals or local clinics for vaccination sites. In addition to that, there is an option for 5310s to do meal delivery. Now that does fall into the incidental use. So that is an option that mobility, not mobility managers, but 5310s do have 5310 subrecipients, and they can work with the mobility managers to understand what transportation is limited in that county and then what they can provide for the actual vehicle. Now within the 5310 program, we must remember that the seniors and persons with disabilities, those trips are prioritized. However, you still can provide transportation to the general public, to low income individuals. If there are any, I know there are some centers that have children that's able, children who have disabilities, you're also able to provide that transportation as well. So there's no age limit there.
So one of the, and I want your opinion on this too, Kierra, one of the other ways in which we're looking to use some of the downtime of vehicles, and we've been in the midst of working with Goodwill and their vehicle that they have, is also supporting workforce, low income workforce. They want to, because it helps a lot of their clients as well that can't get to jobs. And, Lorain County is the 9th largest county in Ohio out of 88, but we have some of the least amount of transit. And so so having these 5310 vehicles can help us bridge the gap in some of these unmet needs. you're going to see later on some information, and I might as well mention this now, that every dollar invested in public transportation generates $5 in economic activity. So there are seniors that are sitting at home that are like prisoners because they can't go anywhere, but they may have money to spend. There are low income people. I mean, in Lorain County, if you don't have a car, you're not really going very far, especially if you're in the rural communities. And so that's why this program really exists, is to be able to bridge those gaps. But we are looking, and we know that medical is our #1 problem, and I'm gonna show that through the transportation survey results. Access to food is #2. So I'm very glad to hear, because I remember a group of us had asked about meal delivery, and we were the group was denied that opportunity to use 5310 vehicles for that purpose. So it's very, very good to hear that that is now allowed. But yeah, these are some of the creative ways in which I know that we're thinking about doing this. But Kierra, can you explain why it is important, though, or what the requirements are that when an agency gets a vehicle, how important these meetings are for them to attend?
Yeah, absolutely, Sharon. So before I mention that, I did want to mention another way that mobility managers are very important in this connection between 5310, ODOT 5310 program, and then what's happening in the county. So whenever you're awarding a project, when you're a designated recipient, such as ODOT, we have a small urban funding pot, and then we also have a rural funding pot. In our small urban areas, I'm always seeing where those dollars are not being spent, where I award as many projects as I can, but I don't receive as many requests in those small urban areas. I know this year in Lorain County, I had about 1 to 2 new subrecipients, but the mobility managers are really out in the county bringing about awareness of the specialized transportation program, because I will be honest, there's a lot of funding out there for small urban. And I'm literally like trying to pick and pull, projects to be able to fund in the area, but I just, I don't have that many requests. So that's another way that mobility managers are doing a really great job in the small urban areas specifically, getting out there and providing information about the specialized transportation program. And if there are agencies, in Lorain County, in these small urban areas that, want to provide transportation for seniors and persons with disabilities, please stay, and connected with Sharon at the TAC meetings. Please stay in contact with me over at ODOT, because we do have the funding available to provide. And I would definitely like to see more small urban projects that are able to provide that transportation come in for those funding dollars, because they are available. They're just not being spent down and they're not being requested.
So who is eligible to receive 5310 vehicles? What is the allocation for how much they receive from ODOT for the vehicle, and then for operations, or what money can an organization get? So can you explain that?
Yeah, absolutely. So within the program, you would have to be a nonprofit organization or a state or local government or public body that has been designated by the state that can provide services for seniors and persons with disabilities. So that's the first thing. You also want to make sure that you're located in those service areas that are eligible under the 5310 program. So one of those in the small urban area, we're looking at, Richland County, Lorain County, those small urban areas that you're able, Allen County, just kind of naming a few. And then Sharon, you did have another question as well.
What is the allocation amounts? And, because I know that there's the cost for the vehicle, there's operations. What are the different types of grants that somebody could apply for?
Absolutely. So you could apply for several grants within the program. We break them down by capital projects or traditional projects and then non-traditional projects. Your traditional projects are more so your capital projects. So you're looking at your vehicles, you're looking at preventative maintenance, and that's repairs. So preventative maintenance is repairs on active 5310 funded vehicles. You're looking at computer hardware and software projects. So all of those vehicles, when you're saying allocation, Sharon, I believe you're referring to the split, so 80-20. Okay. So if you apply for a capital project and you are awarded a capital project, let's say that's a vehicle, that's a computer software project, or a preventative maintenance project, that split is 80-20, meaning ODOT would cover 80% of the cost of that specific project, and then we would require 20% local match. So let's say that I'm just going to use some easy numbers here for myself, but let's say that vehicle costs 100,000. ODOT would cover the 80%, which would be $80,000 of the full cost of the vehicle, which is 100, and then the local would, of course, be required to put in the 20,000, which is the 20% local match. So that's something to keep in mind as well, and that's for all of the capital projects, where ODOT would cover the 80%, and then the local would be required to cover that 20%. Now, your operating grant, and that's operational, meaning that you're hiring drivers to go out and provide, transportation for seniors and persons with disabilities. You're pretty much applying for the operations of your senior center or your adult day program. That's a 50-50 match, meaning that if you requested 100,000 total to provide the service, ODOT would fund 50% of that, so 50,000, and then the local would cover the other 50,000.
Yes.
So that's another project. Now, we also have, which a lot of people are not aware of, is our capital cost of contracting project. And that is similar to our operating project, except for that project is considered to be capital. So ODOT would fund it 80%, and then the local would come in for the 20% match. And capital cost of contracting means that you're running a program, however, you are putting out an RFP and you are having local providers come in and say, hey, we can provide this specific transportation. You may have, maybe 5 local providers that you contract with that are going out, in the county and providing transportation to seniors and persons with disabilities. That is also an option that you have if you don't, directly employ drivers to provide that transportation.
Hey, Kierra.
And PSA 3 actually, PSA 3 is also an Allen County Area Agency on Aging, and they have a third-party capital cost of contracting project through ODOT's 5310 program.
Go ahead, Natasha.
So, hi, thank you so much. It's really a pleasure to be on this call with you, and I understand how frustrating that could be to not see as many projects come your way. And Sharon knows that that's frustrating for me too. I recall in the past, WANA was very kind in sending over a few projects that other counties have done.
Mm-hmm.
Is there any way that you can send that our way, or maybe send us a link to where we can access some of the programs or projects that you're thinking about that Lorain County could take advantage of, and maybe we could mimic or mirror some of those based on the counties that have, maybe the same demographic or geographical landscape. Does that make sense?
Yes, absolutely. And Natasha, if there are specific projects that you're referring to, I can send those specifically to you, but what I can do is I have a couple of agencies that are in small urban areas that do provide, operating and preventative maintenance, and they also receive vehicles as well. I can connect with them and pull off their project description that they submit with their application. And I can definitely put that in a package and have that, share it with Sharon. And then Sharon, you can disseminate that if that's a good way to do that.
Perfect. Thank you so much. I appreciate that.
But I definitely want small urban areas to apply for, transportation in that specific area, because like I mentioned, the small urban pot is usually the apportionment is about, this year it was 2 million. And I received, I would say probably maybe 1 million in requests. So that's something to think about as well, where I'm literally pulling teeth to get projects. In my rural areas, it's not so much. I have about 3.5 million that I have 6 million in requests, but small urban is the complete opposite. So, having the mobility manager there and having her say, Sharon, come to these TAC meetings to understand the 5310 program. which it is very important, and I will talk about that, coming to the TAC meetings and why you must come to the TAC meetings for, to be a participant in the 5310 program. But it's very important to understand the program so that you understand the funding that's out there to be able to provide this transportation, because the funding is there. It's just getting the agencies that are in the small urban areas to actually apply for that funding.
Thank you. You want to go ahead and talk about the importance of coming to the TAC meetings, and then we can open it up to see if anybody has any questions for Kierra.
Yes, so Sharon, I'll go ahead and start. So within the 5310 program, there is an FTA requirement. You may know about it, which is the coordinated plan support document, or not the coordinated plan support document, but the locally developed coordinated plan. So that's what Sharon, as a mobility manager, she works on throughout the year, that 4-year locally developed plan that talks about the goals and the unmet needs and the strategies within the county. So that plan that she develops is a requirement of the 5310 program. FTA requires that any project or any participant that wants to be within the 5310 program and actually receive that funding must be a part of that locally developed coordinated plan. A portion of that is coming to the TAC meetings, because when you attend the TAC meetings, you understand the coordinated plan. You're involved in actually, developing those goals and strategies. Without being at the TAC meetings, without understanding what's in the plan, without coming to the TAC meetings and ensuring that your project is actually in the plan, there's funding that you would actually miss, because we do, at ODOT, we do review that, and we do work with the lead agency and the mobility manager to understand, what parties are coming to the TAC meetings, what stakeholders are involved. So that's something that we do throughout the application process. And we do have a coordinated plan support document in place within the application where we request, information about your participation in the TAC meetings. We request information regarding your strategies and goals of your project and how they align to the coordinated plan. So the TAC meetings are very, very important for, agencies that are potentially wanting to come to be a participant of the 5310 program, to actually come to those meetings and then receive that funding. But in addition to that, you don't want to come to the TAC meetings just to receive 5310 funding. You're wanting to come to the TAC meetings to be stakeholders, to understand what needs and goals and strategies are in the county that you can also be a participant in as well.
Yes, thank you, Kierra, for emphasizing that. I know, I believe in 2023, we're going to be really taking a look at everybody who has a vehicle, and starting to record who's coming to the meetings and who's not. So we have that information for the Ohio Department of Transportation, because we really need, this is not my plan. This is the county plan. And I can't see all and know all that's going on. And so that's why it's really important to get the input from everyone. And by the way, next year is a complete rewrite of the coordinated plan. So next year, more than ever, we're going to need everybody's participation on this. So I wanted to see if anybody had any questions for Kierra regarding this program. I mean, you can see that we have a lot of opportunity for more vehicles in Lorain County. Otherwise, Kierra, does that money go back to the federal government?
So the money, it doesn't necessarily go back to the federal government, meaning I obligated it and then it comes back to me. Let's say that, for example, 2 million is what I receive for federal fiscal year 2023. And then I only receive $1 million in request. I fund that $1 million, and then the additional 1 million that's sitting, I just carry that over to the next year and continue to, and what I do is I carry that over to the next year and continue to fund projects. However, that 1 million that's sitting, and this is just FTA, ODOT, transportation, high level jargon here, but that funding would potentially lapse after a while. So if it's 2023 money and it's sitting there, it's going to lapse in 2025, meaning that in 2025, if I don't have, small urban projects to draw down and obligate that remaining 1 million, it's gone. So that's what we're working on right now. And when FTA is like, hey, let's get some more small urban projects, I love to come to these TAC meetings and tell small urbans the money is out there. Definitely just apply.
Okay, I see we do have a hand raised. Ashley, if you want to unmute yourself and ask.
Hi, How are you guys today?
Hi, Ashley.
I'm good. I actually had a question relating to recovery courts. I'm the coordinator and probation officer for Lorain Municipal Recovery Court. And obviously, we serve a population of individuals who are classified under the Americans with Disabilities Act. So I was wondering if we would qualify for funding to get a vehicle and have those operational expenses as well.
Yes, so Adams County, that I will say, Ashley, that is a unique project. That would be more so funded under our STP program, which, just on a side, we do have state funding. Sometimes that's available within the 5310 program. That's a supplement of the actual annual apportionment. So because that project is a little bit more unique in the actual individuals that you would be serving, it would be eligible, but the funding type and the funding source that we would provide for that particular agency or your agency, should we fund it, would be slightly a little bit different.
Okay.
But yes, I would encourage you, Ashley, to contact me. I want to hear a little bit more about your project and some possibilities of getting it funded, depending on the segment population that you would be providing that transportation to.
Okay, that would be great.
And I'm going to put my email address. I told you to email me, and then I didn't put my email address in the chat. I'm going to put that in the chat right now for anyone that wants to email me specifically after this call regarding their project. It's some possibilities that we have for funding.
Thank you.
Kierra, can you talk about the schedule of the grant cycle so that people know when to start looking out for applying? And I think I'm going to try to, knowing that there's so much money sitting on the table a lot of times, maybe work with our local papers to really make an announcement that it's available as well.
That's really great, Sharon. And that would be a really great start. I'm going to do, my best, definitely schedule allowing to attend these TAC meetings and additional meetings that you might have in the county to bring about awareness of the specialized transportation program so that we can definitely get more, applicants in that specific area. But the funding cycle, and Sharon, I will go through my emails and send that. I don't know if you've seen that cycle that we have, that picture that we created at ODOT. I will send that to you so you can disseminate it to the participants today. But within the actual funding cycle, it's literally almost like a life cycle, an application that we have. So our application cycle actually starts in February of each year, where in February, we have our LOI, our letter of intent. And this document just lets you know, it lets ODOT know, hey, I'm interested in applying for the full application. So that usually happens in February. February rolls around, you submit your letter of intent. And then in March is where ODOT has that mandatory application workshop. And the mandatory application workshop is to, one, let you know if your letter of intent has been approved, but then also to discuss the specifics of the application and to discuss the specifics of the programs. Once you attend the mandatory application workshop in March, ODOT usually publishes the application in April to May. Once the application is published mid-April, it's due towards the end of May. And then those award announcements we like to make, more towards August 1st, because we have between June and July 31st to review the application, score them, and then provide agencies with the results. So August 1st, we would actually make the award announcement to let agencies know if their project was funded or not. And then after August 1st, we're usually looking at about September, October timeframe of where we do a program orientation. So that program orientation you would attend to let you know more about your specific project, any funding requirements that you have for your vehicles if you receive them, any program requirements, any reporting requirements that you would have for that particular project. And then we would actually in October send you out the contract. And then January 1st is when your project would actually start. So you would begin incurring those costs for those particular projects. And then the cycle would just continue to go on and on and on and on, where in February, you have the letter of intent. And then after February, you would go into March, mandatory application workshop. April is when your application, you would be working on that application to submit it mid-April. And then May 1st, ODOT would usually, review those applications. We have a couple of months for us to actually think we have about 5 weeks to review applications. So that pushes us to about August 1st to where we make those award announcements. And then your program orientation in September and October. End of October, you actually have when ODOT would send you out the contract. And then January 1st is when your project would actually start. And then it just keeps repeating itself over and over and over again. And I will share with Sharon that application cycle so that you're able to kind of see the dates of when everything falls.
Thank you. So I wanted to open it back up to see if there's any other questions you have for Kierra, and we're gonna go ahead and move on to the rest of the program. Otherwise, you can raise your hand. I can't see that.
Kim Preston asked the question, and it's a really great question. This is something that's brought up a lot of times. Kim, any ideas and opportunities for finding drivers? A challenge is finding drivers. Yes, so this is something that I'm hearing a lot, especially on the rural side, where rural agencies are having a hard time finding drivers. One way that this has kind of been supplemented just a little bit is through that operating project that I mentioned. So in the operating grant, there is a section where you can claim your driver's salaries and wages on that invoice. So let's say you may say that, hey, our entire grant is 100. Our entire grant is 100,000. 50 of it we need to pay our driver's salaries and wages. You can claim that expense, and ODOT would pay up to 50% of that. Your driver's salaries and wages. We would reimburse you that percentage. Now, with that being said, I have seen agencies that currently are operating assistance, projects that they have through our program. They have increased their driver's salaries and wages. Some people have went up to $17 to $18, just to kind of get some more people in the door. So if you do apply for that particular project, that is a way to, possibly get some drivers in the doors by increasing the hourly rate, increasing that salary, and then you can claim that on the operating invoice, and we reimburse you up to 50% of that cost.
Okay, it looks like we have two more hands up. We do have Ted. Tad, you want to unmute and ask your question?
So I had applied for the operating grant. It's probably been, I don't know, I'm going to guess off the top of my head and say it was 7 years ago. So the operating grant at that time, and I guess my question is, has it changed? The operating grant is based off of an agency running in the red. It's geared more towards the county or something where they could go back to the commissioners and say, we're short this much money. And the commissioners would then allocate half of whatever, and the other half would then go to the state, and that's what would be reimbursed. At that point in time, it was not a matter of you're going to pay 50% of what my operating costs are as a grant right up front. Is that the way that things still are? I don't know that I explained myself very well, but did that make sense?
So the operating grant, the way that I've always understood the operating grant had in the 5310 program since I've been here, is that this is a 50-50 project, meaning 50% is funded by ODOT federal, and then the other 50 we do require on your end as a local.
And that is correct, but it is 50% of what you are in the red. I mean, so my problem is that when I went to put in my cost and those things through the spreadsheet, it came back to where I wouldn't get reimbursed anything because I'm operating in as a break-even kind of a situation. I wasn't operating in the red, but I can't, as an agency, I can't afford to operate in the red. And that was the part that the ODOT grant was paying, was whatever you were in the red. If you were short, if you're covering your cost, then ODOT was not reimbursing me for anything.
I'm not sure what you mean in the red. ODOT would only not reimburse if those expenses that you're claiming are not eligible through the operating grant. So there are some expenses, like we have a USOA, which is our Uniform System of Accounts, and it gives us line items that are eligible to be reimbursed back to the agency. The only time that we would not reimburse from your specific grant is if you're claiming things that are not eligible in the grant. So on an operating invoice, let's say I award you 100,000 and you say, hey, 25,000 I want to be reimbursed for the vehicles that we have. We had some repairs. Well, I wouldn't reimburse you for that because that's a capital expense. It's not an operating expense. The only time we would not reimburse is if those expenses are not eligible under our USOA. Not if you're operating in the red. I'm not familiar with that. I've only been in the program for going on 3-4 years. So that could have been prior to me coming to ODOT.
Well,
But
and that's
since
what
I've been here.
and that's what I'm trying to understand is if the program changed, because at that point in time, if I was able to cover costs, then I was not reimbursed, and I don't know. The program was very much geared towards more like Lorain County Transit or somebody that had another funding source where if they were, I'm not sure how I can really explain this.
Well, Tad, maybe you and Kierra can talk offline.
Yeah, that would be great. I would appreciate that.
Yeah, absolutely.
That may be something that I would give consideration to again, but because of the way the program had been set up in the past. And I think that I was one of the first agencies around here that actually had applied for the operating grant. And that's when it was first coming around. So maybe things have changed. And I guess that was my question as much as anything. Has it changed in the last 7 years?
Yeah, well, it sounds like there's the money there for it, so.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, if you can, Tad, one thing I want to mention as well is that, when we award projects, we want to ensure that they do have the local match requirement, whether it's 20% or 50%. So if the agency can't certify within the application, hey, if you give me the 50%, I'm able to cover the other 50. That's something that we're
none of that was the problem.
Oh,
the problem had to do with the amount of revenue that I had and was covering cost and expenses. When I went through and filled out on the line items, and they were all legit expenses and covered under the grant, because I had them covered through my revenues coming in, I was not eligible to be reimbursed. I mean, that's just the way that it worked out. It's not a matter. So I guess what I'm saying is that if you're operating okay, the state's not going to give you more money to continue that situation and increase your profit margin, I guess is what I'm saying, something along those lines. But I'm willing to have some more conversation about this. I would appreciate that.
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm going to put my number, my contact information in the chat as well. So if you want to give me a call, Tad, we can talk about that specific project. And then anyone else that may have a question along that line as well, we can definitely set up a meeting. So I'm putting that in the chat and my email address.
Very good. Thank you.
All right, Natasha, you have another question.
Yeah, I think it kind of has to do with what Tad's asking, because I know you mentioned nonprofits and I know you mentioned, municipalities, but I'm just wondering, how does that look, or how does that work if we do have Lorain County Transit, like how is it that other organizations or, maybe subdivisions within government are able to apply for grants? Because I'm not sure if there's an overlap. I'm not sure if there's a barrier when it comes to that. So I specifically work in community development under the Board of Commissioners. So I'm not sure what we can do in our department, if it's going to be something separate or if it has to be through LCT.
Absolutely. So that, Natasha, is a really, really, really great question. So agencies can apply. Let's say you are in an area where there is a transit system. And this is a question that comes up all the time. We also have it built into our scoring section as well. So ODOT, we do prioritize projects. We do prioritize projects that don't have a transit system in the area because they don't necessarily have those resources. The transit system should be taking on a lot of those rides. However, that doesn't necessarily mean that you won't, if you do have a transit system in your area, that you won't receive any funding. What you'd want to do in your application is you would want to state if you're applying for operating dollars, if you're applying for vehicles, if you're applying for preventative maintenance, you're going to want to state in your application how there is no duplication of services. Because the 5310 program, it is designed to fill in the gaps where the transit system, can't provide that service. There are some transit systems that can't provide out of county, transportation. There are some transit systems that don't do or specific medical transportation. So if your agency can provide that transportation that the transit system cannot, then those are opportunities for funding as well, because that's what ODOT is going to look for. So that's a really great question, Natasha. There might be a transit system in your area. We know Lorain County is, Lorain County Public Transit is there, but there's a possibility that they can't provide all of that service. And as long as what you're doing is filling in the gaps for seniors and persons with disabilities and not duplicating the service that they already provide, meaning Lorain County Transit is showing up at the same house that you're showing up to all the time, that's a duplication of service. If you're doing out of county trips and specific emergency medical transportation or doing workforce trips, those are ways that you're not duplicating that service, and I will be looking to see within that application.
And
that was a really, really great question.
Yeah, and I do want to add, you mentioned something that we're going to touch on when we look at the survey results, which is the fact that ODOT is really also looking at regional transportation. And that's an issue that we have which is a connection into our neighboring counties. And I'll just tease you a little bit. We're going to see a little information on why people need to get to the neighboring counties. So, let's, I don't know if there's any other questions. If you do need to ask Kierra anything, she has her information there in the chat. So please feel free to contact her regarding that. Oops. And we'll go ahead and move on. I know Kierra has to get off. She has another appointment here pretty soon. But I just want to thank you, Kierra, for being here today and talking about this program. I will be taking this section of the meeting and cutting it out and placing it on our YouTube channel so that people have access to it so they can learn more about this program and the funding that's available specifically for our county that we need to take advantage of, because I think there are more people, more organizations out there that may want to do that. So I just want to thank you, Kierra, for being here. I love working with you, by the way. She's really one of my, don't tell anybody, she's one of my favorite ODOT people down there. But thank you very much.
Yes, thank you, Sharon, so much for inviting me to the meeting. This is my first TAC meeting, and I have another one right after this with another county. But yes, as Sharon mentioned, there is funding available. Sharon, if there are any agencies that you have there today, or if there are other agencies, nonprofit providers in Lorain County that are really like, hey, we can provide transportation, we're looking for funding opportunities to be able to do this, please feel free to have them reach out to me. I can definitely go over the 5310 program. I can talk about all of the eligible projects, anything that we can do to kind of get some transportation really up and running in that area is really what I'm here for. So thank you so much for allowing me to come and speak about the program.
Thank you.